Hello and welcome to Good Game Spawn Point, the show for younger gamers by gamers. I'm Bajo.
And I'm Hex.
And I am D.A.R.R.E.N.
Coming up on the show, we're going to be building some crazy machines from scrap.
Self-preservation protocol engaged!
He's got the crazy eyes, Hex. Calm down, Darren.
Negative! Any and all threats shall be exterminated!
No, Darren, no one said anything about rebuilding from scraps of you. We're going to be building robotic rigs and Rigonauts.
Also, did you know that one of the most popular Pokemon fan sites in the world is actually run by an Australian?
Well, we'll find out more later on in the show. For now, we've got a review to do.
Yes. Rigonauts puts you in charge of a lost tribe of goblins known as the Hobbs. As the story unfolds, you're told about their plight and how they escaped the Master, escaped slavery, and then sailed away to freedom on their ship, the Rigo.
By the time they reach dry land, they've become quite fond of the Rigo, so they decide to adapt it into a land vehicle, and just in time. For the Master of the Shattered Isles has dispatched armies of ramshackle juggernauts to punish the Hobbs for escaping his clutches. To win the Hobbs their freedom, you must fit out Rigo with armour and weapons and defeat the Master's commandants.
The graphics are very cartoony and cute, but this game is tougher than it looks. You're always outnumbered and outgunned, so you have to make clever use of the resources available to you if you want to have victory.
During the design phase of each level, you're free to inspect the enemy juggernauts. You need to pay close attention to the materials they're made of and the weapons they're packing, and then customise your own ship accordingly. Stone components are weak to bombs, bone struts are weak to bullets, wood, naturally, is weak to fire. In addition to designing the fit-out of the Rigo, you can also give the crew some limited instructions.
So the ship is kind of like a programmable robot then, Darren?
Negative. The instructions you can give are extremely simple. You can instruct your goblins to destroy specific enemy ship components in a given order, but they have no AI to speak of. They cannot adapt to events as they unfold and will instead follow your orders mindlessly.
So exactly like a robot then. Exactly like an awesome robot. Wish we had a robot like that, an awesome robot. We don't though. Not that I'm going to mention names, we don't have a robot which just follows orders. We have a robot we're talking about you, Darren.
All right, calm down, you two. I found the combat phases a little bit frustrating.
What about the eyes today?
I know. You come up with the most meticulous, foolproof design you can think of, only to see all your hard work unravel because of that one little detail you didn't see, or more often than not, because of a quirk in the game physics. I mean, either way, you feel helpless in the combat phases, and there's nothing worse than an itch you just can't scratch.
I agree. I mean, this looks like a war game and it looks like a strategy game, but really it's a puzzle game. The enemy ships are puzzles, and you have to learn how to read them. So you have to ask yourself, do I need more cannons to beat this ship, or more machine guns, or more lasers?
More lasers! More lasers!
If only it were that simple, Darren. Things can get pretty crazy. Sometimes I'd find my ship smashed to smithereens only moments after I'd sunk the enemy flagship. A message would pop up declaring victory, but I didn't feel like I'd won anything. I mean, even when you win, it isn't always a thrill.
Yeah, there were some pretty bittersweet moments. Quite often I just fluke a victory and not really be able to tell you why I won. Is it because I had my mortars in the right place? Or did I just have my bone armor at the right angle? I'd quite often ask myself, what did I learn here today? And the answer was, I don't know.
I thought the graphics and the menus were a little off, but the music is good. And I did like the kooky 2D world of the Hobbs. There's an epic yet silly mood to the battles that reminded me a lot of Patapon.
Pon, pon, patapon, patapon.
This is technically single player only, but it's the kind of game where spawnlings could crowd around a PC and try and figure out the best solution together. But we should wrap this up. Bajo, what are you giving it?
Well, there are some really good ideas in this game, and those crazy battles reminded me of those little battles I draw in the margins of my exercise books at school, but they've come to life. Ultimately, though, the action is too unpredictable. Rigonauts rivets together equal parts of fun and frustration, so I'm giving it 5.5 out of 10.
It's 6 from me. Oh, better get off to the news desk. Pon, patapon, stuck in my head.
Darren, do you think the news will be riveting this week? Do you think it'll be riveting news?
Hex here with all the news from around the gaming world. Some interesting results have emerged from a social experiment using Minecraft. 30 players spent 2 months confined to a small 350 by 350 block map. Resources dwindled and players banded together into territorial clans. As the world was strip-mined for minerals, iron and sand were quickly depleted, flowers became extinct, and prolonged wars were fought over diamond and precious materials. One diplomatic clan managed to avoid conflict through trade agreements and treaties, however several clans had their bases destroyed. Interestingly, players tended to put aside their differences and band together to help survive the monster-riddled nights. California-based engineering firm Aerofex has revealed their prototype of a fully functional hover bike. So far, the bike is simply a proof of concept, but has achieved manned flights up to 15 feet off the ground, travelling at 50 kilometres per hour. The concept dates back to the 1960s when it was abandoned for continually flipping over and crashing. However, advancements in balance control make the newer design much more stable and easy enough for anyone to ride.
Patta, 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 pon, 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 patta, pon, patta, 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 pon.
Oh, okay. Darren, you're our resident Pokemon expert, aren't you?
Affirmative. I have in excess of 100,000 individual packets of information relating to Pokemon in my database.
Oh. Well, for those of you who don't have your own D.A.R.R.E.N on hand, firstly, I'm envious. Secondly, the website Bulbagarden is the busiest and biggest Pokemon fan site in the world, and it's run by an Australian. Let's find out more.
Let's.
Affirmative.
For Bulbapedia, we're trying to make that into the main repository of all information about Pokemon. We want to have everything up there. If anyone has any question about any kind of Pokemon, about anything in the games, with the anime, with the trading card game, with some of the more obscure things, we want to have all that information archived there. When the Pokemon games first came out here in Australia, I would have been in the early to middle years of high school. When I got into it, it wasn't really something I could talk to anyone at school about, but I could talk to people online. My first involvement with Bulbagarden was in very early 2001. I started off basically just being an Australian news correspondent, so when there were like Pokemon competitions on, or a Pokemon movie was going to be on TV or something like that, I'd be the one who posted up the information. Within a month or two, I became a moderator on the forums. I became an administrator and later chief administrator within 6 months of that. And unfortunately for me, very, very soon after I became the chief admin, the website collapsed.
There it goes! Super effective! Oh! And there goes the battle!
In 2003, at that point, basically all of the major Pokemon sites were down. Almost on a whim, I asked, would you mind if I brought back Bulbagarden? And so we did it. The hardest part of actually getting the site set up was that I think we've kind of continually underestimated the amount of resources that it would actually take to run something like this. Nowadays we have a cluster of 7 servers running the wiki. Bulbagarden as a whole would be the #1 Pokemon website in the world in terms of the number of people who actually visit the site. I think we get roughly 5 million unique visitors per month. As a webmaster, I'm the boss of the website. If people want to start their own fan sites, really, I think the best thing to do is just to jump in. It could be just something like a blog or a free online forum or something like that. So long as you can devote the time to it and keep the community going, eventually it will go somewhere.
Hey, before we start the questions, I've got a little present for you.
Really?
Yeah, close your eyes, put your hands out.
God, that's so nice of you.
You ready?
It's not even my birthday.
You ready for it? Here it comes.
You're not going to put something gross in there though, are you?
No, not this time.
Okay.
Open your eyes.
Oh.
It's a high five aid. So now, if you are struggling with high fives, which I know you do quite a lot, you can just use this and you're sorted. You don't have to be embarrassed about it anymore. You don't have to go to that support group that I set up for you where you can talk about your feelings about how bad you are at high fives. You don't have to do any more training courses because quite frankly, they're quite embarrassing. There's only so many times you can come bottom of the class. So you're sorted. You're welcome.
Okay, well, thanks for the
welcome.
thought, I guess. I pretty much proved that I was quite good at high fives in the end, but never mind. Let's just move on with the questions.
You're welcome.
Shall we? Let's go with this one from Bobbles is the first in Simon, which is outside Australia.
Why don't you give it a go?
Really?
Give it a test. Why don't you try that out? Take that baby for a spin. Try it on me. See? That was the best high five I've had in this room ever. It's an amazing high five.
But I did them fine with my hand just by itself. Come on.
Don't embarrass yourself. I have been watching Good Game since the beginning. It is one of the all-time great game review shows. My question is, are there any good skiing/snowboarding games, other than the SSX games, out for the Xbox 360 or Mac? Peace out. P.S. I don't care if you don't answer this. No matter what, I will never become a noob. Ha ha. Keep at it.
Well, thanks, Bobbles, but there's a few options out there on 360 and Mac.
First up would be Amped 3. It was a launch game for the 360, so it's a few years old now, but it still holds up as a pretty solid snowboarding game with a few resorts to hit up, various vehicles to ride, and a massive soundtrack.
We'd say our favourite option on 360 is Stoked Big Air Edition, which is a more recent game. It's got real-life mountains, dynamic weather, and it has a much more realistic feel.
There's also Shaun White snowboarding, and while it does a few nice things like having big open mountains and the ability to throw snowballs, we found it pretty dull actually. It doesn't really focus on being over the top like Amped or realistic like Stoked, and it doesn't really nail being fun, but that's one of the few snowboarding games that are available for Macs.
And other than that, there are a lot of skiing games as well. There's Skiing in Connect Sports Season 2 and a couple of other Connect games, but there's no proper skiing games that we know of, although one of the first games I ever played was Ski Free, where you ski down a mountain, you've got to avoid the trees, and then if you ski for too long and stack it, then a big Yeti, what do you call those things? Abominable snowmen?
Big abominable snowman.
Yeah, it comes out and eats you.
Story of my life.
Awesome.
One indie game we heard about a while ago for Windows seems interesting though. It's just called Snow, and it will have skiing and snowboarding. It's been a while since we heard any updates about it, so hopefully when it comes out, it'll be fun, and it sounded promising, but yeah.
Yeah, well, fingers crossed. But moving on to this one from Clop Master in Collinsville, Queensland. Hi GGSP, I have an answer to your question for Clop. Are there any good techniques for Clop? Here's my answer. Just move the two front legs, not the back ones. After a little bit, you will enter lame horse mode, which your back legs won't work. Plus, everyone at GGSP is cool. Not cool, it's cool. Except D.A.R.R.E.N. Well, thanks for the tip, Clop Master, but we're actually aware of lame horse mode, and while it can make things a bit easier in some respects, since you only have to worry about the two front legs, I wouldn't say that it's necessarily a good technique.
Yeah, it also makes it much harder to get over obstacles, but it is hilarious.
Yeah, so points for that. Anyway, keep sending in those tips, Spawnlings, but for now, let's move on to this one from Wouldn't You Like to Know in Milang, South Australia.
I would like to know. How does Anaglyph 3D work? And hey Hex. Oh.
Well, hey to you too, wouldn't you like to know? Anaglyph 3D is actually quite simple, but first it helps to understand just how 3D images actually work. It's actually a bit of a trick. Separate images are created from slightly different angles for each eye, but our brains are so clever that they mesh the images together to make 3D.
We do have pretty clever brains, pretty clever organic brain. It's the phone, and it'll be Darren. He's going to complain about our brains.
Yeah, well,
not that
from
great.
memory,
And
last
then
week he was
he's
actually
gonna-
quite helpful.
He's going to
So
go
why
on
don't you
about
just
it
listen to what he
and
has
try
to
to explain
say
it so he can sound super
and not
intelligent.
complain about it so much.
I think you should answer that, Hex.
Hello.
Hello, Hex. It's me, Darren.
Hi, Darren. Hi, Darren. Yeah, we were just talking about Anaglyph 3D.
Yes, I thought I'd call with some additional information.
No, okay.
Well, as you know, Anaglyph 3D usually uses glasses which have red and blue lenses. I believe you have some there.
Yes, Bajo's modelling them for us. He looks a bit silly.
Yeah, affirmative. The spawnlings at home, even if you don't have any handy, you can make your own just using some red and blue cellophane. Now, how it works. Anaglyph 3D images are basically two images layered one on top of the other, with one image coloured red and the other blue. So what ends up happening is that the light from the blue images passes through the blue lens, but is blocked by the red lens, while the opposite happens with the other eye, where light from the red images passes through the red lens, but gets blocked by the blue one.
So the what?
Of course. So then each eye gets a slightly different image, which merges together in the human brain and becomes 3D.
Nice one, Darren.
Let's move on to this one from Jude, who is in Mullumbimby, New South Wales.
Good game. Will there ever be a Plants vs. Zombies 2? Jude.
There sure is, Jude. PopCap only just announced they're working on a sequel to the hugely popular tower defense game, but sadly there's not a lot more we know about it at this point. I think it's safe to assume there'll be new maps and zombies and that kind of thing.
Yeah. Also, we do know that it's out around midway through next year, but let's move right along to this one. It's our last question for today, and it's from Corey in Pieland, Queensland. Is it Queensland or Pieland?
I hope
it's a bit confusing.
I hope it's Pieland.
Yeah.
Because I'm
Pieland
gonna
sounds
go straight
way
to
better.
Pieland, and I'm gonna live in a pie house. What would be a easy and good 3D game creator? And also, if you notice when you read this, it is in caps. Ha!
Well, Corey, there are a few out there. One of the more popular ones is called Kodu Game Lab. It's a fairly basic game creator, but it's also pretty versatile and free. If you do an internet search for Kodu Game Lab, you should find a download link pretty easily.
Then there's actually a couple of games that have great level editors and are powerful enough to create whole games in. On the PS3, there's Little Big Planet 2, which we've seen some very impressive games come out of. And on 360, Trials Evolution actually has the best level creator we've seen in a very long time.
But we should say that while they do make creating games easier than they would be to make from scratch, it'll still take you a little while to learn the ropes and start making great games. Still, the best way to learn is to just jump in and have a go, and you'll never learn if you don't try.
But there's also a very impressive one coming out for web browsers soon called Game Globe. It'll be free to play and lets you create entire games or just play other people's. And I have to say, the graphics are pretty impressive for a browser-based game, and it does look fairly easy to use. We'll definitely keep an eye on that one.
Yeah, it does sound good. But on that note, we're out of time for this week. And if you've got a question for us, then you can go and send it here. All right, give me that high five thing. You are going to rue the day that you ever gave me this, Bajo.
Too much clapping.
Can I get some work done?
Too much clapping.
Got some games to review?
Too much. Actually, it's quite a good beat. We had your bow here. We could form our own band. What would we call our own band? What would we call it?
Would you actually
We call it the Bajos.
be in a band with me?
We call it the Bajos.
You've been in so many bands with so many different people. I am honoured that you would want to be in a band with me.
I don't get. Don't play
I
well
think we
with
should
others.
call it with the
We call it the Bajos.
Then I don't think so. Maybe like the hexadecimals. That sounds pretty cool. With the
We're splitting up. Band splitting up.
Let's talk about this. Let's talk about it.
Another high score.
Ooh.
Another high score. Well, that's all the time we have for this week. But next week, the magic of cosplay, as the three of us are going to come dressed as one of our favourite gaming characters.
I'm so excited. I've been staying up late working on my costume. I can't wait to show everyone. And Darren, don't forget, thousands of Spawlings have been voting on what you should come dressed as.
Oh, affirmative. Oh, who do I get to be? Clank? Optimus Prime? Oh, Steve from Minecraft?
Not quite, Darren, but trust us, it's certainly going to be something worthy of you.
Yes, may I just say that the Spawlings have chosen very well.
Oh, I hope it's something to match my majestic frame and heroic profile.
Certainly matches your frame, Darren. Well, until then, gamers, may all your games be good ones. Bajo out.
Hex out.
Darren out. Oh, what will I be? What will I be?
Any ideas? Any ideas? What are you coming dressed as? Have you decided
I don't
yet?
know yet.